For centuries, the galaxy assumed humanity was a story of accidents, a stubborn species that somehow survived its own catastrophes, a civilization that should have burned out 100 times but didn't, a mistake that refused to stay erased. But the day the swarm came, the galaxy made a discovery it wasn't prepared for. Humanity wasn't a mistake. Humanity was the failsafe, and as the dark tide crawled across star sectors, devouring suns, erasing space-time like chalk from a board, every world trembled while Earth did something no one expected. We stepped forward and took command, not by force, not by plea, but because the galaxy finally understood a single terrifying truth. Humans don't negotiate with extinction. We hunt it, politely, efficiently, completely. And this is how it began. The Galactic Council chamber floated above Orion's edge like a jewel carved from starlight. Millions of microscopic refractors shimmered inside the vast dome, projecting the living sky around the delegates, stars shifting in real time, nebulae drifting like colored smoke. On most days it was beautiful. Today it felt like a casket. Representatives of 92 star-faring civilizations gathered in a unified silence that was anything but peaceful. Hollow scrolls flickered, alerts chimed, newly updated casualty reports pulsed red across floating screens. The swarm had devoured 3 more systems since sunrise. 3 entire solar networks, consumed, eclipsed, erased. The council speaker, a crystalline being shaped like a living shard of ice, finally broke the silence. The threat is accelerating. We need a unified strategy or we die, interrupted High Admiral Varkle of the Azure Dominion, his blue-scaled fists trembling on the table. We've lost 4 battlefronts this week, 4. Our cruisers can't keep up, their weapons fail, our shields melt. This enemy doesn't fight, they feed, delegates murmured. Fear spread like cold mist, and then the chamber doors opened. A sharp ripple of tension passed through the room as humanity's delegation walked in. 5 individuals wearing simple matte black uniforms. No jewels, no armor, no ceremonial capes. Just plain, quiet authority. Leading them was General Aris Vale, tall, stern. Eyes like they'd seen too many wars and chosen to keep going anyway. Other species stood aside almost instinctively. There was something terrifying about humans when they walked with purpose. Aris approached the central table and placed a small object onto its surface, a metallic insignia shaped like a fractal star, the emblem of Earth's unified defense network. Gasps echoed. "We heard your distress signal," she said. Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake, it simply carried. "And we're not here to negotiate our involvement." A pause, a shift, a rising discomfort. Aris continued. "You need one command chain, one unified doctrine, one fleet with a single purpose, and humanity is prepared to lead it." Pandemonium erupted. "You lead humans? You're barely a Tier 2 civilization. Arrogance! Suicide!" The crystalline speaker raised a hand, restoring silence. "General Vale, humanity proposes to take command of every fleet in this chamber. Every dreadnought, every scout vessel, every defense platform. Yes. By what justification?" Aris pressed a sequence on her wristband. In an instant, the chamber lights dimmed. The holographic dome flickered, and then the stars vanished, replaced by a different sky, one filled with human ships. Not the dozen or so vessels the galaxy knew about. Not the handful of cruisers they'd politely displayed during diplomatic visits. This was a hidden armada, a formation so massive it blotted out starlight, a sea of titanic silhouettes, Dreadnoughts the size of floating continents, stealth cruisers shimmering in distortion fields, carrier platforms that looked like artificial moons. The hall fell dead silent. Eris spoke softly. "We've been preparing for something like the swarm for a long, long time. We didn't advertise it. We didn't offer it. We didn't boast. We simply built because it's what humans do." Her gaze hardened. "You need leadership. You need coordination. You need strategy of final tap." The hologram zoomed into one colossal structure, a mobile command citadel dwarfing every known battleship in existence. "And you need a fleet that doesn't break." Alien leaders stared, breathless, overwhelmed, afraid. Humanity had never looked so small on the political stage, because they were looking at us for the first time in scale. Slowly, one delegate, Elaith of the Shalkari, rose. "We accept," and like falling dominoes, so did the rest. The newly unified council watched humanity's command hologram flicker above the chamber. But Eris Vale wasn't done. Not even close. Where most species designed ships around elegance or philosophy, humans built vessels the way they built themselves, with stubbornness, contradiction, and a level of violence that bordered on artistry. As the hologram shifted, the first vessel came into full display. The Leviathan, a dreadnought so large its mass registered as a gravitational anomaly. Its hull wasn't smooth like alien designs. It was brutal, layered, textured like a continent shaped into a war machine, constructed not from alloys, but from adaptive metallic lattices grown in orbital smelters. Ships that healed themselves, ships that learned, ships that got angry. Alien delegates stared in disbelief. "That can't be real," whispered the Velnari envoy. Eris glanced at him. "It's the smallest one." Whispers broke out again. The projection zoomed deeper. Data scrolled, weapon signatures flashed, simulations played. The Leviathan's spinal cannon wasn't plasma, ion, or neutrino-based. It was something entirely different. Arc-fold detonation lances, beams that warped space itself into a razor-thin crack, slicing through enemy fleets like scissors through cloth. No heat, no explosion, just removal, gone, deleted from existence. The Azure Dominion Admiral shook his head. "Why would you even build such a weapon?" Eris didn't blink. "Because something worse than us was always going to show up." She gestured. The hologram shifted again, this time to the Spectre class. If Leviathans were mountains, Spectres were shadows. Their forms shimmered, flickering between visibility and distortion. Entire vessels that could bend light, heat, energy, even gravimetric signatures. They weren't invisible. They were unfindable, built for reconnaissance, infiltration, assassination. A Spectre could slip into a system, map every weakness, and vanish before the enemy ever realized a visitor had come. The Shalkari minister swallowed nervously. "How many of these Spectres have you deployed?" Eris gave the faintest smile. "Enough that if we wanted to end this council meeting right now, you'd never know who fired first." Eyes widened. Panic flared. The room stiffened. Then Eris lifted a hand calmly, soothing the tension. "We didn't come to threaten. We came to lead." Big difference. The room exhaled together. Next came propulsion systems, something the galaxy had always underestimated in humans. Most civilizations used hypersails, energy tunneling, or gravitational surfing. Humans used impulse rift drives, engines that didn't push ships through space. They punched holes into the next coordinates, like teleportation, but violent. Where alien ships eased into jump corridors, human ships tore reality like wrapping paper and stepped through. Fast, loud, terrifying, and beneath every engine, every weapon, every deck plate was the real secret: human adaptability. Aris expanded a new hologram, battle logs from humanity's independent conflicts, wars won against impossible odds, planets defended with improvised tactics, ships rebuilt mid-battle from scrap and salvage, fleets that changed doctrine overnight and never repeated a mistake twice. The Carvathi war chief watched with growing awe. You change so fast. Your tactics shift constantly. No doctrine, no pattern, no rigid code. Exactly, Eris replied. Predictability is extinction. Aliens had always assumed humanity's technology was primitive because humans rarely showcased their full capabilities. What they didn't realize was that humans hid strength not from enemies, but from themselves. Because if humanity ever learned how strong it truly was, it would terrify even them. The hologram expanded one final time, showing an entire Terran armada in motion, engines igniting, dreadnoughts aligning, specters slipping into thin air. A fleet that moved like a single organism, fluid, coordinated, unstoppable. The council chamber trembled with the sub-bass rumble of simulated engines. The room felt small beneath the weight of human power. Eris Vale stepped forward. This is Earth's arsenal, not built for conquest, not built for dominance, built for survival, built because we know what it means to lose everything. She scanned the room, her voice deepening. If you stand with us, we will not fail you. If you follow us, we will not abandon you. If you trust us, we will win silence. Then slowly, one by one, the alien delegates bowed their heads. Humanity had not asked for permission. Humanity had offered salvation. The decision was made within a single galactic sunset. Humanity would lead the unified fleet. But accepting a command was one thing. Building a war machine the size of a small galaxy was something else entirely, even for humans. What came next would be remembered as the greatest logistical miracle in recorded history. The assembly phase. It began with a sound no one was prepared for. Not engines, not alarms, not marching soldiers. Construction, raw, unfiltered industrial thunder. The Orion Spire shipyards lit up for the first time in centuries, their ancient rings grinding as they rotated into place. Clouds of drones rose like mechanical flocks, swarming around half-built vessels the size of continents. Entire asteroids were hollowed out and reforged into ammunition vaults. Gas giants were siphoned to feed fusion banks. Solar collectors were positioned across star systems like scattered jewels. Aliens watched the chaos unfold with a strange mix of fear and admiration. Where most species approached militarization with ritual or philosophy, humans approached it like a massive group project with an impossible deadline and no intention of failing. The Carvathi Shieldwalkers were the first to speak what everyone felt. They are everywhere, building everything. All at once, Aris Vale stood on the command deck of Helios Station, overlooking a docking bay where a Leviathan dreadnought was being grafted with alien shield tech. Because we don't have time, she answered simply. No excuses, no metaphors, no embellishment, just urgency. Humans worked like the universe owed them a fight and they intended to collect. But coordination? That was the real battlefield. 16 species, dozens of doctrines, hundreds of incompatible weapon designs, thousands of languages and command styles. And somehow, humanity pulled it all together. The secret wasn't dominance. It wasn't intimidation. It was something far simpler. Humans listened. They listened to Velnari battlefield mathematics, which calculated enemy movement probability with eerie accuracy. They listened to Karvathi defensive rhythms, turning shield lines into living walls. They listened to aerial engineers who could stabilize warp fractures with their bare hands. And then, after learning everything, they rewrote it. The unified combat doctrine was born, a hybrid blueprint so elegant and flexible that even ancient races admitted they could never have built it alone. The Spectres integrated Velnari stealth harmonics. Leviathans took on Karvathi shield geometry. Strike wings used aerial reaction boosters that tripled acceleration. By the time the first joint fleet rolled out of dry dock, it wasn't human anymore. It was something better. But the scale was terrifying. Imagine a formation so vast it stretched across an entire planetary hemisphere. Imagine dreadnoughts casting shadows over cities. Imagine carriers large enough to hold their own internal ecosystems. Alien citizens gathered across their worlds just to watch the assembly broadcasts. Children pointed at the sky as specters flickered in and out of visibility like ghosts. Elders lit ceremonial flames as dreadnoughts rose into orbit. Generations that once feared humanity now whispered prayers to them, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Still, even as the Armada neared completion, the tension didn't fade. Fear doesn't vanish simply because power arrives. Every alien species had heard old Earth legends, stories of human wars fought with a brutality that ignored the impossible. Stories of entire planetary sieges ended with a single ruthless strike. Stories of soldiers who refused to surrender even in death. Those legends lingered in the minds of every council member. The unified fleet was shaping into something the galaxy desperately needed, and something it might never be able to stop. On the final day of assembly, Aris stood before the panoramic window of Helios Station. Before her stretched the largest armada ever conceived. Lines of dreadnoughts like silver mountains, carriers like migrating islands, specters shimmering like mirages, alien cruisers woven between them like threads in a cosmic tapestry. It didn't look like preparation. It looked like destiny. Aris tapped her comm. All fleets. Begin sync ignition one by one across the void. Engines roared to life. Blues, whites, silvers. A sunrise made of metal and fire. The council chamber watching remotely fell silent. Entire civilizations paused their day. Even stars seemed to dim. For the first time in galactic history, a unified armada existed. A fleet with one command, one doctrine, one purpose. Aris Vale watched her reflection in the viewport, her voice barely above a whisper. Let's give the galaxy a fighting chance. The war hadn't even begun, and already the universe was holding its breath. The unified fleet had risen. The engines were lit. The galaxy had watched humanity build the impossible. But now came the part no species could prepare for. Seeing all of it move. For centuries, individual races had their navies, their proud ships, their battle formations. But nothing in all of recorded galactic memory compared to what unfolded across the Orion Verge on the day of first mobilization. From orbit, it looked like a star field had come alive. Lines of ships drifted into formation with precision so unreal it felt choreographed. Massive dreadnoughts rotated into diamond phalanxes. Alien cruisers slotted into their tactical lanes like puzzle pieces. Spectre wings flickered in and out of sight, ghosting through the gaps between larger vessels. The unified galactic armada wasn't simply assembling, it was breathing, and every species watching felt the same visceral reaction: fear, awe, reverence. The Velnari coral network vibrated with disbelief. Humans, they turned chaos into symmetry. On the Karvathi homeworld, shield walkers gathered in silence, their armored hands pressed to their chests. "This is not a fleet," the elders murmured. "This is inevitability." In aerial floating cities, engineers stared at the broadcast with wide, shimmering eyes. No one coordinates fighters at that velocity. Even the stoic Zir Dominion, a species known for emotional detachment, recorded a rare public message. "We acknowledge Terran supremacy in the field of warcraft. This is overwhelming, but not everyone trembled. Some remembered. Old stories resurfaced. Whispers carried through trade lanes and diplomacy halls. Whispers of Earth's past, of battles waged with merciless speed, of enemies crushed before they could raise shields, of soldiers who fought like storms wearing human skin. Whispers that humans didn't wage war to survive, they waged war to finish it. Leaders across the galaxy watched the broadcast and exchanged anxious glances. If this fleet ever turned inward, if humans ever decided to take instead of protect, what force could stop them? None. Not even all the galaxy combined. And yet there was something else in those broadcasts, something quieter, something unsettling, human expression. There was no triumph, no arrogance, no hunger for conquest, only resolve, unbreakable, controlled, razor-sharp resolve. It made the galaxy shiver. Eris Vale stood on the upper bridge of the flagship TSS Aurora Ascendant, the command nexus of the entire Armada. Holographic lines floated around her, mapping out fleet formations and hyperlane relays. "Transit windows stabilizing," an officer reported. "Spectre wings requesting clearance to perform slipstream sync. Karvathi bulwarks anchored. Defensive wall confirmed." Aris nodded, hands behind her back, her posture almost ceremonial. "Bring us into full alignment." Across 12 star systems, thousands of ships shifted by degrees so tiny, so intricate, that alien tacticians watching the live feed gasped. No species had ever synchronized fleets at that scale. It wasn't just discipline, it was culture. It was humanity's oldest instinct: work together or die alone. And the galaxy suddenly realized how terrifying cooperation could be when perfected by a species like them. A soft alert chimed on the command deck. "Broadcast from the Galactic Council," the comms officer said. Eris exhaled, slow and steady. "Put them through." The holograms of 12 council representatives appeared in a circle around her. Their faces, furred, scaled, crystalline, glowing, were united by the same expression: shock. The Velnari representative spoke first. "Commander Vale, we did not expect this level of mobilization," Aris answered without a hint of pride. "This is the minimum required to survive what's coming." The Karvathi war chief leaned forward. "You built this armada in mere cycles. How? How is your species capable of such scale?" Eris didn't smile. "Because humans don't prepare for war the moment it arrives." She turned slightly, gazing at the fleet. "We prepare for the war after." Silence fell. Across the galaxy, across the council chamber, across the command deck, because they understood. This armada wasn't built to defend. It wasn't built to retaliate. It wasn't built to intimidate. It was built to win a war the galaxy hadn't even seen yet. A quiet dread settled over every world tuned into the broadcast. What enemy could possibly require this? The council representative finally whispered the question on every tongue. "Commander, what do humans know that we do not?" Eris didn't answer. Not because she couldn't, because she didn't want to. Not yet. Instead, she activated the fleet-wide channel. Her voice carried across dreadnoughts, carriers, cruisers, fighters, and alien command stations alike. "All vessels, Prepare for hyperlane expansion. The allied species watched, breath held, heart stilled. Galactic Armada, she said softly. Begin the march. Engines ignited, space folded, stars stretched, and millions across the galaxy whispered the same thing. May the universe protect whatever stands in their way. Because after seeing humanity's unstoppable armada mobilize, no one else could. Across the luminous lanes of the galaxy, whispers turned into tremors. Not physical ones, but emotional, cultural, existential. Billions of beings sat in silent anticipation as the integrated armada assembled under a single unified command. Humanity's command. On the Vocan homeworld, where citizens rarely displayed visible emotion, entire plazas gathered to watch the live holo feed of the mobilization. Their crystalline eyes flickered faintly as the first Leviathan dreadnought entered formation. A single muttered phrase traveled through the crowd. Humans. Terrifyingly efficient. In the floating metropolises of the Acera Dominion, students abandoned their sky classes to watch the same broadcast loop again and again. Most had grown up hearing exaggerated tales of humanity's battles. The Siege of Titanus, the Voidfire Protocol, the Battle of Eros Prime. Stories told in hushed tones, stories meant to inspire caution. But the reality unfolding across the star lanes now was far beyond myth. The combined fleet stretched beyond anything recorded in their archives. Vessels from over 100 species aligned into formation, each shifting slightly as human command algorithms recalibrated their movement to synchronize the entire structure. It was like witnessing a mechanical galaxy within the galaxy, a vast metallic constellation shaped by war and necessity. Even the elder races, the ones who had survived ancient cosmic calamities, felt a familiar shiver crawling up their spines. The shiver of history repeating itself. Except this time, the center of power was not an elder species. It was the newcomers, the upstarts, the humans. Humanity had once been the smallest voice in the cosmic hall. Now their voice wasn't just loud, it was the voice others waited for before breathing. Across the council worlds, political analysts argued endlessly on holo channels. Is this alliance truly unified? Can humans be trusted with such overwhelming authority? What will happen once the external threat is over? One commentator stated what many silently feared. Humanity does not hesitate. Humanity does not retreat. When they commit absolutely, and they win at any cost. Any species whose doctrine is rooted in survival at any cost will reshape the galaxy, even unintentionally. But amidst all the fear, there was something else too. Hope. A fragile, trembling hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the alliance the galaxy had needed for 1,000 years. A hope that the same human traits that made them terrifying in war also made them loyal in unity. A hope that this time they would all stand together. And as the last fleet cluster locked into formation, the final transmission echoed across the star network. The unified armada is assembled. Prepare for first strategic maneuver sequence. Stand by, the galaxy did not stand by. It held its breath. The first maneuvers were subtle. No flashy jumps. No grandiose announcements. Humanity's command didn't believe in theatrics. They believed in preparation. And preparation, at this scale, was a civilization-sized undertaking. The Armada began stress simulations, coordinated warp drops, mixed species wing rotations, combined weapon discharge tests. Every movement was a lesson, every misstep a doorway to improvement. The Leviathan Dreadnought Atlas Prime served as the beating heart of the command network. From within its armored core, Admiral Saren Holt monitored everything. His voice came through every intercom, calm but razor-sharp. Sector 9, adjust your left flank. Vulcan cruisers are drifting half a degree off vector. Correct and stabilize Spectre wing, cloak, and reposition. Remember, we move as one. Under his command, something extraordinary began to happen. Species once at odds learned to compensate for each other's weaknesses. Human adaptability merged with Vulcan precision. Ysera predictive protocols fused with Terran tactical improvisation. Even the Stow-Car, once considered too aggressive to work with others, learned to synchronize their wild charge patterns with human flanking strategies, creating maneuvers the galaxy had never seen. It wasn't perfect. There were clashes, disagreements, communication breakdowns. But progress was undeniable. And the more the fleet trained, the more the galaxy understood this critical truth. Humanity wasn't leading because they were the most powerful. They were leading because they were the only ones crazy, innovative, and stubborn enough to unify species who had spent centuries mistrusting one another. Long-term implications spread like wildfire through diplomatic channels. If this alliance survived, the balance of power would shift permanently. Old rivalries would lose meaning. Old empires would be forced to adapt or collapse. And humanity would become the linchpin of an era defined not by isolation but by collaboration under pressure. But beyond politics and predictions loomed the shadow of the unknown adversary. The one threat so catastrophic that even ancient empires had bowed to the necessity of unity. No one except the Council knew what had been discovered in the outer void. No one except humanity understood how little time they had. As the Armada prepared for its first synchronized warp, a quiet message was broadcast only to commanding officers. No fanfare, no emotion, just truth. The enemy has made its first move. Stand ready, humanity didn't flinch. They simply adjusted their course and prepared to lead the galaxy into the darkness. As the unified Armada braced itself for the first warp into the unknown, a strange stillness settled across the galaxy. A stillness so deep it felt like the cosmos itself was watching. Billions of beings stopped what they were doing, eyes fixed on distant skies or glowing screens. Every mother holding her child a little tighter. Every soldier standing a little straighter. Every leader silently whispering a hope they were too afraid to voice. For centuries, the galaxy had been fragmented, suspicious, divided. Species fought over resources, borders, philosophies, pride. Old wounds lingered, old grudges festered. The idea of unity always felt impossible. Until now. Because sometimes the universe doesn't give you a choice. Sometimes survival demands something greater than fear. Sometimes it demands trust. And in this strange twist of fate, it was humanity that stepped forward. Flawed, impulsive, stubborn humanity. But also innovative, resilient, endlessly adaptive humanity. The species that once crawled out of a blue planet with more hope than logic. The species that refused to break, even when the galaxy underestimated them. The species that could turn chaos into strategy, fear into courage, and uncertainty into action. In that moment, as the massive Armada hovered on the edge of the star field, waiting for the jump into darkness, the entire galaxy understood one thing. This was not just a fleet. This was a promise that no species would face annihilation alone, a promise that unity wasn't a dream. It was a choice, a promise that sometimes the smallest voice becomes the one that leads everyone home. And when the order finally came, Admiral Saren Holt's voice echoed across 1,000 ships, steady and calm. Unified Armada, engage. The stars bent, space folded, and the greatest force in galactic history vanished into the abyss. Not as separate empires, but as one. What awaited them beyond that warp line remained a mystery. But for the first time in many lifetimes, the galaxy wasn't trembling in fear. It was trembling with hope, because unity is not built in peace. Unity is forged in the very moment the universe tries to break you. And this time, the galaxy refused to break.